O autor delinquente que salvou a Shonen Jump, hein? Vamos ver quem é esse cara?
Tournaments, friendships, androgynous characters. These elements weren't always popular tropes, until the author who grew up beating people up helped make them become a staple for Jump's battle stories. Today, I want to talk about the legendary manga author, Masami Kurumada, who does not get enough recognition outside of Japan for his contribution to the world of manga. Masami Kurumada was born on December 6, 1953, in a place in Chuo, Tokyo called Tsukishima. His family were Tobishoku, who are the equivalent of construction workers, but specialize in working in high places. They say that Tsukishima, literally meaning Moon Island, was originally written with Tsuki meaning construction instead of moon. So it's no surprise Kurumada's family were Tobishoku, since construction type work seemed to be the most common trade there. Growing up, Kurumada had no intention of becoming a manga artist, because he believed that only those with notable accomplishments could become one. Like the godfather of manga, Osamu Tezuka, who had a medical doctorate, Kurumada had no notable accomplishments, much less a medical doctorate. Instead, he was a hot-blooded delinquent who loved fighting, and we can probably assume he got into a lot.
Muito foda. Como é que as pessoas não vão gostar de um homem que tem a foto dessa aí? Muito foda, muito estilo, muito drip.
Of fights. But little did he know that, in the 1950s, many future notable manga artists of different backgrounds were moving to
Não, tô normal.
Tokyo to begin their career. They had to overcome one problem though. The magazine they intended to work for, Manga Shonen, the same magazine that employed Tezuka, ceased publication. You see, shonen manga aimed at the male demographic, was booming in popularity, and many publishers wanted to start their own line of shonen magazines, so the field was competitive and oversaturated. Luckily, magazines aimed at the shoujo or female demographic resurfaced after World War II and began featuring story-driven manga, and so many of the artists in Tokyo, including Tezuka, illustrated manga for shoujo magazines for employment. Both shonen and shoujo manga would influence Kurumada later in life. In 1968, when Kurumada was a teenager, a new underdog shonen manga magazine named Shonen Jump debuted, and in one of their first serializations, a series titled Otokozaka Gaki Daisho also made its debut. The series is about a delinquent named Mankichi Togawa, whose chivalrous nature allows him to
Ele, os capítulos desse mangá aqui é muito legal, velho.
Take on society's issues, usually through his fists.
Só que esse que é o foda, a qualidade é isso aqui que ele tá mostrando. Ele pegou da Scan também. A qualidade da Scan é isso aqui, né? Aí, porra, é difícil.
Usually through his fists, Kurumada fell in love with the series. He related to Mankichi since he too had a similar background. And what's more is, the author of the manga, Hiroshi Motomiya, grew up a delinquent and got into fistfights too. This changed Kurumada's belief that you needed some kind of recognized accolade to illustrate manga. Otokozaka became Shonen Jump's first hit and put Kurumada on the path to becoming a manga artist. He got himself some pens and paper and began drawing. During his third year of high school, he submitted a one-shot to Shonen Jump with the hopes of winning the Young Jump Award for newcomers. He did not win, which is actually a good thing that happened because of what came after. Usually you'd assume most artists would simply try again, but Kurumada's different. He's a hothead. Instead of simply working on his next submission for the contest, he walked into the Shonen Jump editorial department at Shueisha's office and demanded to know why he lost. His youthful energy impresses the office of Shonen Jump, and they offer him work as an assistant to Cody.
Ele chegou... Imagina, chega o japonesinho lá na Jump, que não era tão gigante na época, ele chega... Ué, vocês estão malucos? Por que eu não ganhei essa porra? Não, vocês vão ter que me falar por quê, porra. Vocês estão malucos, porra. O prêmio é meu, porra. Tá doido?
The author of Samurai Giants, written by the legendary Iki Kajiwara, the writer of big-name manga titles like Star of the Giants and Ashito no Joe, stories that Kurumada grew up reading. And this is how Kurumada got his foot in the door
O escritor, né? O escritor? Ah, isso.
at Shonen Jump. After learning the ins and outs of manga creation with Inoue, he debuted Skeban Arashi in 1974, the story of Rei Kojinyama, a high school girl who tries to become a proper young lady following the death of her mother, but always winds up reverting back to her delinquent nature due to the circumstances she encounters. While there were only 20 chapters that were released before its cancellation, you can see a lot of notable elements that are unique to Kurumada take shape, especially in the ink spatters in the action scenes, and the way
Caralho. Porra, total, mano. Total. Total, 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 total. Total. Tá tudo aqui já.
There were only 20 chapters that were released before its cancellation. You can see a lot of notable elements that are unique to Kurumada take shape, especially in the ink spatters in the action scenes, and the way the characters take hits. People don't simply get hit in Kurumada's stories, they dramatically get knocked away, focusing on the impact of the hit rather than the action of hitting. After Skeban Arashi's cancellation, Kurumada worked on a one-shot that was released in 1976. It starred, once again, another tomboy delinquent similar to Rei Kojinyama, who also used nunchucks. There's not much to say about it, because it felt like an offshoot of Skeban Arashi, and it was compiled in Volume 2 of Skeban Arashi's manga release. Now this next manga would become Kurumada's first hit, and the series that perfected Shonen Jump's battle manga formula. I'm talking about Ring ni Kakero, which debuted in 1977, a manga about Ryuji Takane, the son of a pro boxer who passed away before becoming world champion. When his mother marries an abusive deadbeat to keep them afloat, his older sister Kiku takes
Caralho. Esse pai aí é uma desgraça.
Ryuji with her to Tokyo, where they promise to one day return for their mother after Ryuji becomes a world champion, following in his father's footsteps. Unlike Kurumada's first stories, the story stars a male protagonist who actually isn't a delinquent, but rather someone who just isn't too into fighting until later. Ring ni Kakero initially featured a grounded take on boxing, but fights eventually escalated to an 11 when it started featuring superhuman feats and out-of-this-world theatrics and finishing moves. Elements that made Jump's previous hit, Astro Kyudon, popular with readers. Many people read Astro Kyudon for its insane storyline that included things like people committing suicide during a baseball match or a human waterfall.
Caralho! Caralho!
Astro Kyudon, popular with readers. Many people read Astro Kyudon for its insane storyline that included things like
A gente não sabe nada, né? Caralho. Não sabe nada, mano.
people committing suicide during a baseball match or a human waterfall. But Ring ni Kakero
Olha essa cachoeira humana, velho. Muito foda.
had more conventional storytelling. Many consider Ring ni Kakero the reason why characters shouting attack names has become a staple to the series that features superhuman abilities, in addition to the inhuman theatrics. And that's not all. Ring ni Kakero also includes a character named Napoleon
Cara, Ring ni Kakero é muito importante. É um negócio assustador, mano.
Baroa, whose design is clearly based off of Lady Oscar from the shoujo manga titled Rose of Versailles that ran a few years earlier in 1972. Napoleon Baroa is the first in line of beautiful male characters Kurumada would include in his works moving forward. When Ring ni Kakero ended, its final chapter received a special treatment by Shonen Jump by including the final chapter as the lead story featured in the magazine, and its first pages featured a color spread. In addition to that, the rest of the chapter was in color to a certain extent as well. The very first time Shonen Jump has ever given any special thought to one of its series leaving the magazine. Ring ni Kakero is Jump's first mega hit. It helped the magazine
É um homem, velho. É um homem. É a máquina. É a máquina de vencer, não tem jeito.
reach a milestone of 3 million readers. It changed the way Jump did action manga and steered the trend from doing sports stories, a genre that was all the rage in that era, to straight up martial arts stories. From the popularity of Ring ni Kakero, series such as Fist of the North Star and Dragon Ball were born. Jump entered its golden era. Editors now knew what readers wanted to see, and they would push authors to do
Porra, faz todo sentido. Faz todo sentido. Abandonar os esportes e pra essa questão que o Kurumada era um mangá de boxe. E ninguém fala aqui no ocidente, né? Porque não veio pra cá, né? Mas ele tinha muitos... Como ele era um mangá de um esporte que o Kurumada não conhecia, que isso é muito importante, tá? O Kurumada não ligava pro boxe, então ele não entendia como é que funcionava o boxe. Ele só usou o boxe porque era pra ter soco. Inclusive nessa entrevista que eu mostrei no início da live, ele sabia de judô. Aí eu pergunto pra ele, mas por que você nunca fez um mangá então de judô, tal, se você gostava de judô? Mas ele falou que o judô esteticamente não ficava legal para um mangá. Pra você fazer linhas de ação e tal, não fica tão interessante pra você fazer no mangá. E faz até sentido, né? Tem menos... O impacto é diferente, né? E aí ele falou que ele utilizou o boxe porque o boxe era uma maneira mais fácil de você utilizar o impacto, né? Então, tipo, você dá o soco em alguém, voa o sangue. Tipo, no judô não, você vai, derruba a pessoa, tal, tem impacto, mas a pessoa vai sair cuspindo sangue e tal. Agora, se você dá um soco bem dado na cara de alguém, vai ficar uma marca, a pessoa vai cuspir sangue. Faz sentido a escolha do esporte pra ele contar a história dele, né? Então é bem interessante.
do the same. While Shonen Jump was busy capitalizing on their
Não
newly
é
found
dramático,
trend,
exatamente.
Kurumada wanted to focus on his own things for a while. He did some comedy one-shots here and there, some starring his usual delinquent protagonists, and one that is a parody of Ring ni Kakero, while trying to think of something to serialize. He did eventually get serialized again with Fuma no Kojiro, the story about Kojiro, a young member of the Fuma clan of ninja that had existed since the Warring States period. The story evolved into something that it originally wasn't, from a typical sports story with ninjas to simply being about ninjas that battle. The series was popular, but ended after about 96 issues, not because it didn't meet Jump's expectations, but because Kurumada's father passed away during serialization. Kurumada no longer had the drive to continue the series,
ele largou de
and he
mão
even
essa aí.
quit smoking. During Fuma no Kojiro's run, Kurumada managed to find time to draw another one-shot that appeared in Fresh Jump, a magazine that featured mostly one-shot content. The series was titled Raimei no Zaji and debuted in Fresh Jump in 1983. The story about a man named Zaji.
O homem sabe fazer uma página dramática, né? O homem sabe fazer, né? Cara de costas com essa luz forte assim. Ele sabe. O
His
homem sabe.
background is mysterious, even to himself. This story was originally a
Caralho, a mão tá ao contrário? Tá. A mão tá ao contrário, beleza.
one-shot, but then Kurumada released a second chapter a year later, and then another chapter 4 years later. It becomes one of Kurumada's stories that is ongoing, but with periodic updates. The latest chapter was released in 2014. Anyway, in 1984, Kurumada felt recharged and debuted what he expected to be his magnum opus, Otokozaka, the story about Jinki
Otokozaka, que é muito engraçado você ler os capítulos que ele lançou lá nos anos 80, anos 70, anos 80, e aí depois o mangá fica no hiato gigante e volta nos 2010, assim, é muito diferente, assim, é uma leitura muito diferente do padrão, porque você pega o autor em fase muito diferente da vida. É interessante, tem completo esse. Em inglês, claro.
Kikukawa, a teenager who was undefeated in fights his entire life.
Não, acho que terminaram em português também, eu acho que foi isso, né? Ah, foi em português, aí ó, tá aqui. Tá finalizado.
Until he encountered Sho Takeshima, the man who gave him his first loss. Otokozaka is a homage to Hiroshi Motomiya's debut manga, Otokoi Pikigaki Daisho, the series that set Kurumada on a path to becoming a manga artist. You would think that it would have been successful, but it wasn't. The story was decades late in its debut, and wasn't the kind of stories you'd find.
Ele teve muita série, né? Hoje, no máximo, um autor de sucesso tem duas? Não, isso é uma falsa visão, Chico Will. Isso é a visão de caras que têm sucesso, você pensa em 3 caras, sabe? Tipo, o Oda, o Kishimoto e o Kubo. Mas, no geral, os autores têm bastante coisa e nem todas elas fazem sucesso, ou o cara tá, tipo, a gente tá vendo caras muito novos, por exemplo, sei lá, pega o Ishida. O Ishida tá, vamos dizer, no segundo mangá dele. Mas é porque ele é novo. O Fujimoto já tem várias obras aí lançadas, enfim. Mas já tá na segunda obra dele mais recorrente. Mas é porque esses caras são novos, né? Eles não tiveram, assim, tanto tempo pra lançar tanta coisa assim ainda. Né? Por isso que, a carreira do Kurumada já é uma carreira de 40 anos, né? Então é o tempo mesmo que essas pessoas ainda não tiveram, né? E tem gente que também larga no meio do caminho, né? Tipo, faz uma obra de sucesso, depois não lança mais nada, ou então tudo que lança, a gente nem fica sabendo porque é cancelado rápido, ou não sai nas revistas que o pessoal traduz pra cá. Então tem várias questões aí. Mas no geral o pessoal lança bastante coisa. Só esses caras maiores aí que entraram naquela lógica da Jump, que tem aquele vídeo que a gente viu muito bom do Analyze It, explicando por que teve uma época específica que eles quiseram lançar obras muito grandes para não acontecer o que aconteceu em 96, se repetisse, enfim, toda essa questão, né? Mas vários autores têm várias obras lançadas, mas é uma outra que vai dar certo, né?
Find in Shonen Jump anymore. The kinds of stories Shonen Jump readers wanted to read in the 70s and 80s were action-filled stories full of spectacle and theatrics. And ironically, these were storytelling elements that Kurumada himself helped to bring to life with Ring ni Kakero. Otokozaka was pushed to the back of Shonen Jump magazine, where
muito foda, vai tomando Midnight Special.
stories go to die after about 26 chapters, and it was cancelled by chapter 30, sort of. Kurumada was really looking forward to authoring this series, the story that took him almost a decade to realize since its debut. In the final splash page of Otokozaka, instead of writing the word end, he wrote the word incomplete, something unheard of in the era where stories would come and go. Shonen Jump only allowed this because of all he's done for the magazine. Kurumada was angry at the readers, and he knew how to get back at them. After a year of charging his ki, Kurumada was ready to unleash his magnum opus, his real magnum opus. He created a series with the intention of being popular with the audience, finally giving in to the formula he helped master. And this series is called
Seiya.
Saint Seiya, or Knights of the Zodiac as it's localized in many parts of the world, is about Pegasus Seiya, the Bronze Saint, who is joined by 4 other Bronze Saints. Together, they protect Athena and the world from harm, even if it means fighting gods, comrades, and other people.
Pra sacanear os leitores, que é isso? Ele não satisfeito em criar basicamente o shonen como a gente conhece, ele foi lá e ensinou mais um pouquinho.
In charge. Readers like tournaments? Bam! There's a tournament in the first arc. Flashy attacks? It's got that too. Since the series was meant to be popular with the mainstream audience, he made sure to draw the cloths, the in-universe name of the armor the Saints wear, as fashionable looking as possible. Saint Seiya also saw Kurumada become very inventive with new ideas that would further evolve.
Não, pô, Ringini Kakero vendia pra caralho, ele já era rico já. Pra que tanto esforço? É porque ele é japonês, né?
Of Jump's storytelling. You see, Seiya and his team are classified as the Bronze Saints, the lowest tier of the hierarchy. The
E é meio que o trabalho dele.
next strongest are the Silver Saints, and at the very top are the Gold Saints. Seiya and the gang would often clash with the highest tier, the Gold Saints, while still retaining their status of Bronze, despite the overwhelming odds stacked against them. Everyone loves an underdog story, and seeing the low class triumphant over the high class always gets the blood running. The 70s, thanks to shows like Kamen Rider and Super Sentai, also made transforming a popular trope. Kurumada was quick to jump on that idea when Seiya and the other Bronze Saints got power-ups thanks to the gold cloths, a power-up that predated the Super Saiyan transformation in Dragon Ball, although they were temporary. Now let's talk about designs. While Seiya's design is pretty much Kurumada's go-to protagonist design, everyone else around him stands out. And that's because Saint Seiya is full of beautiful men, straight out of a shoujo manga. I mentioned earlier that Rini Kakero had a character named Napoleon, whose design is inspired by Lady
Ainda bem que ele se esforçou, né? Porque o que esse homem deve fazer de dinheiro até hoje com essa venda desses bonecos é sacanagem.
Oscar from Rose of Versailles. Well, here in Saint Seiya, it's Lady Oscar times 1,000. Especially the Gold Saints, very beautiful. The characters in Saint Seiya inspired many future shoujo artists in their design. Clamp, the group known for creating Cardcaptor Sakura, used to make doujinshi or fan-made works of Saint Seiya. Kurumada introduced to the world many storytelling elements that would influence so many of our favorite series. His works are often overlooked, because it's overshadowed by the
Muito bom ele mostrar o Bleach, porque se tem alguém que foi influenciado pelo Kurumada foi o nosso amigo Chichikubo, né?
popularity of other series that he indirectly influenced. And I hope you learned a lot about Masami Kurumada, the hot-headed author who helped shape Shonen Jump. If you want to read more about Kurumada, I encourage you to check out George Horvath's blog titled Land of Obscuration. His articles provided so much information for this video, and I can't thank him enough. Until next time.
É, legal. Muito bom vídeo, cara. Será que tem... Ah, tem uns sources aqui. Otário Shinomura. Tem o NHK Shonen Jump Documentaries. Eu nunca vi, não.